Hey guys, what's up? Hope everybody's having a good day out there today. Welcome back to another edition of Intuitive Angling. Really appreciate you guys making some time out of your day to watch the video, and got some really good tips for you guys today. I'm going to share with you guys some hard school, super old school, summer water, super shallow water jig fishing tips. It's probably one of my favorite ways to catch them is on a big full-size jig in the heat of the summer. I'm going to give you guys a bunch of good juice on this. And real quick, I want to remind you guys, if you've been on the Baitworks link trying to order some of the blocked old school jigs we're going to talk about today, you know they've been out of stock because we've had a weed guard issue. Got that real close to getting fixed up, so you guys can put your pre-orders in right now at Baitworks. I'll include the link in the description, and they're going to be ready to go real soon here. So much appreciated. Okay, guys, this right here it's the way I learned how to tournament fish. I mean, I learned the old school art of summertime jig fishing long ago, and I've been able to take it all over the country and do pretty good with it. And I'm going to go over with you guys some of the setups I like as far as the jig setups first, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about technique and area and that type of stuff. So first of all, there's basically in the summertime of the year, when I'm jig fishing, I'm thinking about power fishing for jigs. I'm thinking about bombing this jig in there with, not trying to finesse them out at all. I'm trying to trigger a reaction strike. Usually goes with a big full-size jig, a little bit heavier jig with a big trailer on it. And I really have 3 different setups I use for it based upon the type of cover I'm fishing. This is probably my favorite. This is the, like I said, a 5/8 ounce blocked old school, black with the blue tinsel in it, which is key. The tinsel is so key over the black and blue rubber. Guys, if you're fishing water visibility that is really under 2 feet, you'll get so many more bites on this tinsel than you will on the rubber. The tinsel's super hard to tie. That's why these things are so labor intensive, and that's why you can't find them anywhere. And then I'll couple it up with a Zoom big salty chunk. This is the old school chunk, just like this. This is probably my favorite summer setup right here. This is the first one I use. The second one I use is the black and chartreuse 5/8 ounce, usually with a black Zoom super chunk on there. Now I'll use the big salty chunk sometimes, but I really like the big super chunk on there because it's a little bit longer on there. I can thread it on like a frog and even make it longer. But I'm using the black and chartreuse if I have the dirtiest water. Like say, for example, if I'm fishing water visibility that is maybe under 8 inches or so, or 8 to 12 inches, something like that, I'm going with the black and chartreuse. Also, we'll go and get into color a little bit here in a second, but I'll get into that just shortly. And then the third one is the blocked old school 5/8 ounce, and this I've got the Zoom Magnum Speed Craw on it, which is a curly tail trailer. So the difference, I've got 2 straight tail trailers, 1 curly tail. The curly tail trailer, guys, is when I'm fishing what I consider a little deeper in the summertime. And when I'm talking about deep, I'm talking about no more than 3 feet. The techniques that I'm going to show and talk about here, guys, is designed to catch bass in 1 to 3 feet of water, no deeper than 3 feet of water. So I'll use the curly tail if I'm on that upper end of like the 3 foot depth that I'm targeting. So go into a little bit on color here. Let's talk about color. Now, I mentioned before is the black and chartreuse. I use this in the dirtiest water. Like I said, water visibility underfoot, anywhere between 4 inches to 8 inches is my ideal visibility for this. I like to go with black and chartreuse with black because it silhouettes good in that dirty water. Sometimes I'll use like a black with a chartreuse tail on it. I'll take like a green pumpkin super chunk and dye some of it black, dye a little bit of chartreuse. Sometimes that works good. This black and chartreuse is a real good trigger in that real dirty water there. And then the black and blue with the blue frog on there, this is what I consider the little bit cleaner watercolor. So if I'm on that water clarity close to 2 feet, and I don't want to fish any summertime jig in water that's clearer than 2 feet. But if I'm on that range between 12 inches and 2 feet, I'm using the blue trailer on there. The blue, it's not quite as obtrusive. It blends in a little bit more, yet it stands out. So the black with the blue trailer is what I go to, just a little bit, just a little bit cleaner water. Now, sometimes I will use the black the big salty chunk on there if it's a little dirtier, but this is the one I prefer. And then the with the Zoom Super Speed Craw, Most of the time I'm using the black. Sometimes I'll use the blue with that, but I'll keep it pretty simple on that. So next is the line setup on this thing. One of the big keys on this, guys, is your line. You can see I've got pretty heavy line. This is 25-pound test Seaguar and VizX line. I never go lighter than 25-pound test. I use 25 and 30-pound test fluorocarbon the entire time. I don't use braid. I like the qualities of a fluorocarbon. It gives you a little bit of stretch, but not much. It's a lot less invisible. I think the jig works a little bit more natural with it on this size of line. And it seems like I land a lot more fish and get a lot more bites with the fluorocarbon. And like I said, 25 to 30-pound test. And then I tie it with the double uni knot on there. And you guys, if you don't know what a double uni knot is, you can excuse me, go back in some of my older videos and I talk about it. But the double uni knot with this jig is really key, because when you're flipping and pitching in that shallow cover, you're putting a lot of pressure on them. And this is a jig that has this is a knot that has an extremely high shock ability to absorb shock on there. It's one I like. And then I'll match it up with the Megabass Alkalies flipping stick on there. So that's the setup there. So the things you want to look for, let's talk about areas a little bit. When you're talking about super shallow summer jig water, it's not necessarily about the water clarity so much, because a lot of times if you got the right situation, you can catch these fish in some pretty clean water. Say, for example, if you're fishing a lake in the middle of the summertime that the water's come up a little bit, and say you're fishing the lower end of the lake and you've got water visibilities of 2 foot or so, which I consider clean in the summer. A lot of times the fish will get in that clear water in the shallow cover and you can catch them on that. So you don't have to look for muddy water all the time. So the only times that I do fish the cleaner water, like the 2 foot visibility, is if I have some type of flooded cover, which a lot of times you do in the early summer. Like here in Missouri right now, we've got 7-8 foot of water in the bushes and it's June, and we're probably going to have flooded cover most all summer long. So, that's pretty common. But most of the time in the technique that I'm talking here, I'm searching for the dirty water. I'm looking for the dirtiest water in the lake. And the dirtiest water in the lake traditionally is in the upper river portions or the upper creek portions of the lake, depending upon how your lake's laid out. If you're in a lake like Lake Eufaula in Alabama, you have a lot of dirty water options. You don't have to run to the extremities to get to it. But if you're in a lake like Grand Lake in Oklahoma, you may have to run way up the Spring River or the Neosho River to find that dirty water. The water clarity that I'm looking for in the summertime when that water's hot, I found that 6 to 12 inches is key. There's a window there. If you get a little dirtier than 6 inches, a lot of times you don't get a lot of bites. And if you get over 12 inches of visibility, you don't get as much bites as either. Not saying you can't catch them. You can catch them in cleaner water or dirtier water. Most of the time I'm looking for that 6 to 12 inch of visibility. And I'm also looking for wood cover. The wood cover is the key. And it doesn't have to be a lot of wood cover. It can be isolated. One of the things that you're going to find out in the summertime for this jig fishing technique that I'm talking about is search out for horizontal wood cover that's isolated on the flatter banks. And a lot of times in a river channel situation or a river situation on a lake, you've got a channel side and you've got a flat side that meanders up the lake. In the summertime of the year, I'm usually always hanging in on that flat side. So I'll be scouting the lake and I'll keep an eye out on mud banks or gravelly banks. I'm looking for one piece of wood, one laydown, one stump, one dock, something isolated. That isolated cover, wood cover in whatever form it takes on flat banks, is the number one thing that I look for if I'm fishing a river section. Now, one of my favorite ways to do this in the summertime is if you get back into some of the major creek arms. And a lot of the lakes, especially like a lowland lake, if you get in the back of a major creek arm, the water will get flat in the back of there, and the bigger part of the lake starts to reduce into the old river channel. And once you get far enough back into that old creek and that old river channel, a lot of times you got mud banks with laydown wood on it. This is a great place to catch them, especially if the water's a little bit lower. because what happens a lot of times in the back of those creeks like that, there'll be a lot of siltation towards the back of the creeks that make it difficult to get back into those back ends. And if you take your time and idle back into those creeks, once you get back into the old channel, it will drop off and you've got a lot of isolated wood to fish. It's really good. Prime example, if you guys have fished down at Lake Livingston in Texas, not Lake Livingston, but Lake Livingston in Texas, Lake Livingston in Texas, or even what is that one we fished by High Rock there? Louisville Lake. Yeah, Louisville Lake in Texas. You've got a lot of those flatter creeks that drop off into that old channel towards the back end of it and have isolated logs and stuff on it. But mainly, guys, it's just committing to the technique. It's getting that big, dark looking jig, looking for dirty water, looking for wood cover, and just committing to it. And why a lot of guys are out there structure fishing, live scoping, down imaging, that type of stuff, there's a population of bass to be caught that will live shallow all summer long. And it doesn't make any difference how hot the water is, guys. If the water's 90 degrees, I've caught a ton of quality bass in 90-degree water that's this deep in the middle. It's this deep in the summertime if you have dirty water with wood cover. So my favorite way to fish, man, there's nothing funner than pitching that big jig in there on heavy line, letting it go down a foot and just seeing your line pop like that, and you set the hook on a 4-pounder. So give it a try. So hope you guys catch a few doing that. Please hit that subscribe button, much appreciated, and we'll talk later.